Hello, welcome to another episode of Becoming a Techno Wizard. And today I'm going to show you what I read, specifically the fiction I read. Um, specifically, the web fictions I read, otherwise known as web serials or webbies. Now, these are, I'll go ahead and start here actually. These are basically fiction books, but the authors write them, or the writers, write and update the chapters on a weekly or daily or even monthly basis. And so there's not a whole, standalone work. Like it's not a book that you can buy from Amazon. A lot of these, even though they do offer them, we'll get into that a little bit later on, bookstores. But most of these are like in a website, like Royal Road or whatever, where people are just writing stories and updating it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And people are reading these stories on a regular basis. And I read a lot of these. I'm very excited to share, what I do read. So, 15 minutes to see what we get into. So, first, I'm going to start with some of the things I read right now. Right now, I'm reading roughly, looks like five web fictions. So, The Legend of Renedly Ghost Hound is a sort of lit RPG type of story, and sort of uh, game world come to Earth type of thing. I don't want to get too much into spoilers or anything like that, but it's a very interesting story. I really enjoy the uniqueness of the world building and how everything is kind of put together and the type of lit RPG style. For those that don't know what lit RPG is, it's like literary role playing game type of thing. So you're writing about a person, a character, or suite of game characters or whatever, or suite of characters who are either in a game world or a game world is in their world. Basically, they have stats and skills and all this stuff, and it's just an interesting kind of genre of fiction. So it could be fiction. I mean, it could be science fiction, or it could be fantasy, or some mix of both. Randomly Ghost Hound is kind of more on the fantasy side. Yeah, definitely more on the fantasy side, but it has a little bit of science fiction in there as well. But it's definitely more on the science fiction. I mean, on the fantasy side. Um, Very interesting book. I've been reading it for a while. Up to date on it. I read it almost every week. So it's number one. Next one is Quest. This Quest is bullshit. So this one is relatively new. This one is kind of a lit RPG as well, but it's more kind of jokey, kind of more laid back, which I really really appreciate because I read a lot of darker or like high intensity type of stuff. Um, so this one is funny for yeah, it has like comedy and stuff like that. Um, so you can check this stuff out yourself if you're interested. But I'm just going to introduce you to all these things because it's a lot to introduce. This one, like I said, is relatively new. Started about a year ago. Has just reached over 100 chapters. Now, what's also interesting to point out though is that many of these web fictions are made by just random people, right? They're not even indie authors. A lot of them. A lot of them are just random people who this might be their first time writing, or they might have written a few other smaller stories or their own web fictions, whatever. And a lot of them, once they really get to a point where they have a lot of readers, they have a Patreon or some other sort of subscription service where people can pay them on a regular basis to they can get extra chapters ahead of time or things like that. So this Quest is Bullshit is actually the second story this person has written. Um, Maybe they wrote other ones, but the first story I read from them, which is in my completed area, is The Nothing Mage. And this one was, oh my gosh, really, really beautiful story about a mage. And specifically, with their power. I don't know if I want to get into, yeah, they don't mention what power he has, I don't think. But it's great. It's a little bit darker on the darker side, but it is really a really great series on the shorter side. And since he finished it, or they finished it, they put all each part. They broke up the entire thing and put it into different kind of volumes, so you can buy the whole thing on Amazon. Definitely recommend reading that. Anyways, another thing I'm reading. Let me close this. Is Dungeon Crawler Carl. Now I know this author has written a lot of stuff. I haven't written. I've only read one of their other stories, which is really, really dark. I'll probably, did I pull that one up? No, I'll show you that in a little bit. But this one is, it's kind of dark as well. I'm not, it's pretty, it's kind of dark. Um, but this one is kind of like an alien invasion type of thing. And I guess it's kind of a lit RPG as well. Yeah, it's kind of a lit RPG type of style. That style is just really popular right now, and there's so many areas you can get into with it. But this story is really incredible, pretty engaging. So again, I'm not going to read to it through, all the stuff right now, but maybe in another day. Have a lot to get through. But another one definitely recommend reading. This one's more science fiction, but it has a lot of fantasy as well. Wandering In. Oh my gosh, this is one of the best stuff I've ever read, ever. And again, I've read probably over 1,000 books, probably a couple thousand books at this point. And quick aside, like the whole reason I even started with web fictions is because I've read so many books that I just got tired of ending them. Right? Like you would read a great book, maybe even a whole great series, and then it ends, and you're just like, dang, I want to know about this. I want to know about that. Part of it was escapism. When I was growing up, I was, very depressed, growing up in poverty and stuff like that. So reading was like my getaway and everything like that. And also engage my imagination, help me, be more ambitious and find a lot of the stuff that I was missing in my life through those books. That's obvious reasons why, a lot of people read. But nonetheless, I was a guy walking around with a big old book in his hand. Like I used to walk around with a big old Harry Potter book. Um, and now it doesn't even seem that big. But back then, when you're in like third, fourth grade, everybody else is barely reading, is not even, excited to read. I'm over here walking around with a 300, 400, page book in my hand. Just, yeah, I never got bullied for it, but I just found it funny. And yeah, I would clean out my library just reading everything that they had. But so many books were just too short for me. So eventually I found web fictions, and I'll show you which ones I started with. But I love these things because they really, really get into the world building, which I really enjoy. That's my favorite part of fiction books is the world building and how you can see the world from different characters. You can really have really intricate plot lines and get into a number of details that you just can't get into in a regular novel. So I really appreciate what these people do. And The Wandering End specifically, the reason why I appreciate it is because it seems to encapsulate everything. Like it's a little bit of lit RPG, so a whole lot of fantasy. It's dark, but it also has some really great comedy, some really great light areas. Um, Really intricate twist. Like you can't really predict what's going to happen next. There's so much going on here, and I have to take my time with this one because each chapter. That's another thing I love about it. Each chapter is really long, and if I don't catch myself, I would literally be up all night reading, page by page. And I caught this one late, so I'm not even up to date on this one. I'm a couple hundred chapters behind. So I'm like, look at all this. Look at all this volumes. Um, Sheesh. You see, it just keeps. Where am I? I'm probably. I'm not sure. I gotta look on my phone. But yeah, I'm not even up to date with this. So if I don't stop myself, I will literally be up all night, every day, just reading chapter by chapter. Um, but another thing that helps, it is dark. So sometimes it gets so like somebody dies who you really care about, or something happens, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I almost brought me to tears several times. And I'm not a person that cries easily. This book is really, really amazing. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. There's a lot of inconsistencies, here and there, which you kind of expect was for something this long and this intricate. And the writing style is very strange. Like it took me a while to start reading this book because at first it kind of seemed a little childish, right? And you understand what I mean if you read this yourself. It kind of seems a little childish the way it's written, the way certain characters speak. But when you actually read it, you understand why. It's actually a purpose for that, and it's just amazing. It's one of the best things I've ever read. Highly recommend. Death World is one of my again, one of the best things I've ever read, especially in the science fiction area. I'm a huge fan of science fiction, but unfortunately, it's been very difficult to find good science fiction because, and I've talked about this in other videos, but you kind of have this problem of modern day society being so dystopian, where almost every science fiction book or novel is a dystopian thing, where it's like, oh, we're in apocalypse, post-apocalyptic, blah blah blah. You know, the world's coming down. Here's war. Like enough, right? Like let me get some hope. Let me get some ideas of what's possible out here. And so this is it has a little bit of dystopia in not I wouldn't even call it dystopia. It's just real, right? This is a first contact type of story. So alien invasion type of thing. But the whole premise of this whole Death Scrolls thing is that, well, should I get into? Yeah, I don't think it's a spoiler. You know what? I'm not even gonna say. I'm not even gonna say. If you're interested, read it yourself. If anything, I might actually go back and read the first chapter, the prologue, because that's one of the best prologues to a science fiction book I've ever read, and it was so engaging, so interesting. The way they just flipped. Yeah, I'll probably read that. It's called Kevin Jenkins Experience. So I'll probably read that one day to really get you the idea of what the story is about. But I love it. It's amazing. So yeah, another great book. And am I up to date with this one? I think I'm actually a couple chapters behind. Yeah, I'm a couple. I'm like right here. So a couple chapters behind it, and these are super long. Each chapter is like 100, like a 2 hour read. A 2 hour read. You got that. So I don't know how many words that is. 5,000 words, 10,000 words. I don't know. It's super long, and I love it. So it's absolutely great. Highly recommend. Um, okay, so those are all the things that I'm reading right now. All right. There's a number of stuff that I started reading, but I stopped for various reasons. So the first ones is because of the authors stopped writing. So that's unfortunate. Some of it's it's a lot because again, many of these writers are not authors. They're not actual authors, not like published authors or anything like that. They're just people, right, who had some story ideas and started putting it online. And a lot of these have difficult problems in their lives. They have like they're going through school, they're trying to get their career sorted out. They have health problems, you know. And so some of these, unfortunately, are very good, but the authors had some sort of problems in their life and they had to stop writing. So the game is one of my favorites. The science fiction, also lit RPG, also has some fantasy elements, but definitely on more on the science fiction side, which I really appreciated. So I really enjoyed this one, but unfortunately, the author I think stopped writing. I'm not sure if they started again. I haven't checked in a while. 2020 update. So yeah, I might check that out. Um, but it looks like they haven't actually started writing. But yeah, so this was one of the a great book, but they stopped writing. So I'm super excited for when they do start. So hopefully they're going to be starting that again soon. Apex Predator, oh my gosh, another really great science fiction, really interesting twist, really interesting way or premise that they had everything. So I've actually been on this author's Discord, and they stopped writing because of family issues and or health issues or whatever, but also because they said they didn't like where they were going with this or how they wrote this, which I don't understand, to be honest, because I really liked it and I loved how they did it, because this takes the science fiction novel decidedly in the space of positive, like a positive outlook, right? Where it's world changing. It's they change the entire world, but they do it in a positive manner. And that one, it was just I just love seeing that. Um, but I don't know. I guess the author didn't like how they wrote it, so they're gonna rewrite it. I hope it doesn't go into dystopian model, because it was just getting super interesting where they changed the whole world and they started, kind of getting connected to the other galaxies or other places and stuff like that. So I hope they get started with this again. And yeah, I'm excited for that too. I think this author also is writing another web fiction called The Monot Loop, which is like a Groundhog Day type of thing. So I'm not reading that. And the reason is because I've actually finished one, which we'll get to a little bit later. But yeah, we'll get to that. But I'm not sure if I want to read like the same genre, even if it is by a different author. And I do like this author's writing style. I just like to, try a bunch of different areas and subject matters and premises and all this other stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. Like you see here, like I have a lot to read, so it like I'm not even sure if I'm going to pick up another web fiction right now, even though there's a lot of really great stuff out there. I have a lot to catch up on, I have a lot to finish, and I want to get back to reading some novels because there are some great ones out there, like Brandon Sanderson. A lot of his stuff I want to, get into. Ready Player Two, a couple other stuff. Anyways, we got Change New World. Now this one I honestly don't really remember. I don't remember why I stopped reading it either. I think it may have been the author. Yeah, the author stopped writing. But I honestly don't remember much of this one, so I'm not sure if it was that good. But um, I know it was a lit RPG. It may have been pretty decent. But yeah, that's another one I've read. Practical Guide to, oh my god, another really great book. This one is decidedly fantasy, dark fantasy type of stuff. And for this one, it takes the side of the villain, if you will, right? And I say that with quotes. Oh dang, that's past 15 minutes. So I'm not even halfway through. I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna just keep going because I got so much to go through. And for the next, like, whenever I do this video like this again, I think I want to read through some stuff rather than just talking about everything I'm reading. But anyways, so this novel or this web fiction like is again amazing. I don't want to get into it. You can read it yourself. Maybe one day we'll read through all these summaries and stuff like that. But I really appreciate what they do. But I had to stop reading this one because again I was getting too stuck into the world. Like, and I was up to date with it too. So every time there was like a lot of these web fictions leave you on a cliffhanger, and sometimes you can be like, all right, dang, shoot, I'll just wait for the next one. I can't wait. But this one, I would be like going crazy. I'm just like, oh my, what's gonna happen? I wouldn't be able to focus on my work or anything else. So I literally had to put this down. I just had to cold turkey to stop reading. So they have a lot more updates. So I might have to, bring this back into my life somehow because it is an amazing world and stuff like that. And I think one part of it too is I'm not sure if these chapters are that long. They're decently long, but not that long. Whereas something like Death Worlders, it's pretty long, but there's a lot of kind of micro chapters in there. So you can kind of stop, they come to natural stopping points throughout. So I don't feel I can kind of stop myself from reading it. Um, but for this novel, it's just like the whole thing is just it's just hard to stop. But it's amazing. It really is amazing. Now this is the only non-web fiction book that I'm non-web not fiction book, but it's not a web fiction. So that's the only one that I'm reading right now that I haven't finished. And this is Neil Stephenson, Fall or Dodging Hell. This is kind of this is super popular. You probably heard of this one. Um, but the reason I stopped reading this one actually is because I felt I didn't enjoy, where it was going, right? Near the latter half, the latter half of this story, it kind of just went all over the place, and I personally just didn't really, you know, um, I didn't really enjoy it too much. I might get back into it just because I want to finish it. I don't like not finishing things, so I might go ahead and finish it. But honestly, it was kind of I was like, it's like it's just not really giving what I wanted to get from it. But the beginning. Oh my gosh, one of the best like ideas, and I've actually used excerpts from this book from the beginning of this book in my talks before. Like the part where he's talking about light and making simulations and stuff like that. But this is a very interesting book, but unfortunately, I think the latter half kind of just went off the rails. And this is coming from me, who reads things that go off the rails, right? Like, but at least with web fictions, you kind of can follow it, right? It feels very fluid, and when you look back, you realize that you started, you're in a completely different place than where you started, and but you understand how you got there. And here, even though he does kind of explain how he got there, it just doesn't feel. There's a lot of time gaps, for instance. There's a lot of places where it just jumps ahead and you're just like, whoa. But with web fictions, there's very rarely ever time gaps, definitely not that large. Um, and even when there is, like, that's the thing with web fictions too. Like, people can comment on your stuff. Like, usually these are in a place where you can comment on the author's writing. So week by week, the people in the commenters will tell you if they like it, if they don't like it, if they found, typos or whatever, inconsistencies, or what they really love, what they didn't love. They will be debating about stuff. So kind of it gets you more engaged. I haven't personally commented too much because, again, I already take a lot of time just reading. I don't want to take more time commenting on what I'm reading. But I feel like if this was a web fiction, people would be in the comments be like, "What in the world? Why did you go there? Like, why do you have this time gap? What happened?" Stuff like that. That's why I really love web fictions too. Keeps you honest. Savage Divinity is another interesting web fiction, kind of a I forgot what the term is, um, isekai type of thing. Like, main character goes to different world type of situation. Um, this was a interesting interesting web fiction, but my problem, I had to stop it because it felt too grindy. And, like, sometimes in these stories, an author can, focus a little bit too much on certain details. Like, if this is like a slice of life, then every single day they will talk about, like, what they did on every single day. And sometimes it just gets grindy, especially when you feel like the main character isn't making much progress, or isn't really making much sense as you would understand it, or as they have been written up to this point, like their progress. It just, I don't know, something about it just didn't really sit well with me. And again, it's up to the author how they want to write it. I'm not criticizing the author, even though I do think it's okay to kind of critique people for their work. Like, you have to give people feedback, but I'm not going to go out my way to do all that right now because, again, too much time. But I personally would rather wait until this one is basically done, and I would just read through it. I just, so if I want to skip something, I can be like, and this is the first, like, I never skip what I'm reading. That's another problem with this. Like, there were many times where I felt like I could just skip chapters. Maybe not chapters, but like paragraphs. I would just scroll through, just kind of speed reading, stuff like that. And I don't like that. Like, the fact that I felt like I needed to do that, to me, was a bad sign. Because me, I really enjoy not only like the world building, but like how the author is writing, like their writing style, the type of words they use. So I would purposely read slow, to kind of give myself time to digest what they're saying. I would maybe read back a little bit to kind of, in my head, say a different way to try and get to an idea of how I thought the author was putting together these words. So I can really appreciate that the fact that they spent time putting words on the paper for me to read. Right, I'd like to spend time going through all that. So the fact that I felt like I could just skip through paragraphs, I was like, I just need to fit this down. So it's an interesting story, but unfortunately, I think the writing style and the level of detail into certain types of character development just didn't really feel that good. And there were a number of other kind of things that were kind of problematic as well. Like, it has like a harem type of style, which you for those that don't know what harem is, it's like kind of a male fantasy of a male character having a bunch of women, loving up on him, stuff like that. And kind of, especially when you read a lot of these, it just gets really, really troublesome, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, maybe one or two times you can kind of be like, okay, maybe, because I'm not against polyamory. Like, I used to watch documentaries on polyamory relationships because I found that really interesting. I'm not against the idea of that sort of thing, but it's handily in a lot of these web fictions goes like, just honestly a little bit sexist. All right, it's a male with a bunch of females, and they're like vying for their attention and things like that, and it's just like, ah, I'm not really here for that. But some people like it, so whatever. But it's not really for me. The Zombie Knight Saga, really great web fiction. This one was one of my earlier ones that I read. Um, and this one was really good. I stopped this one because I was, again, this was my early days too. It was too short. The chapters were too short. Like, you could read the whole thing in like 5 minutes or something like that. right? And that was just too short for me. And then especially if it took like a week. Well, sometimes I think, if I remember correctly, sometimes he would release a daily, or they would release like 5 or 7 chapters at a time, which was cool, but it's still kind of short, right? And again, at that time, I was just reading everything, so my speed for these things, was not really conducive to like reading just short stuff. And furthermore, again, I was up to date, so I wouldn't be able to focus on my work because I'd be thinking about, oh, what's the next chapter? What's going to happen next? So I had to take a break with that, and I never got back to it because I was so far. Like I read a couple. Yeah, look at that. 20. Yeah, still going. It's still going. It started in 2014 or 2013. Hundreds of chapters, hundreds, right? So that's my problem too. Like when you fall off with these web fictions, it's hard to catch back up, especially nowadays that I'm working and doing all this other stuff, because that means I have to dedicate time to catching up again. So I have to reread what I read so I can remember, what was going on, and then keep catching up. So I don't know if I want to start. Well, I probably will, because this one was just that good, and specifically what was good about this one was that it was fantasy, but it seemed like science fiction because they use like scientific, kind of ideas as to how these powers worked. And that really intrigued me because usually in the fantasy thing, it's just like, oh, here's the magic system, whatever. Me, I like hard magic systems. So when a magic system is like, this is exactly how it works, like where the magic system itself is like a science, I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. I want to get into it. That's my whole techno wizard, type of things. Like I want to invent magic, right? Um, but yeah, I probably will read this again and catch up with it. But this was great. Unfortunately, I had to stop. Now, The Gods Are Bastards is another really interesting novel, um, almost classic fantasy. So you have type of Dungeons and Dragons type of role where you have cleric, wizards, warriors, that type of thing. But it also has a Western style, which was very interesting. So you have like gunslingers and cowboys type of thing. So that was pretty cool. But I don't know. I honestly, this is the one of the weird ones for me because I did enjoy reading. I never felt like skipping anything. I liked the characters. I liked the world building. I liked how they wrote. But I just I just wasn't excited to read every chapter. Right when it came out, I was just like, oh, okay. I'll read something else, and then if I have time, I'll come read this, which is weird to me because again, I liked it. There's nothing I can say that I just didn't like. It just didn't, for some reason, grab me. Um, so I kind of just naturally just kind of stopped reading because I was reading other stuff that was more exciting to me, and I kind of just steadily stopped reading this one. So I do want to get back into it, but then again, I don't know why I don't want to get back into it. It's just there. Um, Maybe I'll give it another chance, and see. Maybe I was just in a certain mind state at the time when I stopped reading, which is like a year or two ago. Um, but it's an interesting novel. I love the dragons. I gotta say, because usually a lot of these fantasy books either have no dragons, um, and I love dragons, or they have like really simple dragons. I love it when you have really amazing types of dragons with unique type of powers and things like that. Um, I always find that fascinating. Some of my favorite fiction novels, like actual finished works, have really cool dragons like the Nexus of Calaran. Um, but is what it is. This next one is goes into my Wuxia bag. So I read a lot of, not even a lot, but I've read a decent amount of Wuxia and Zongxia. I hope I'm saying that right. But these basically Eastern novels and light novels, Eastern fiction, right? So Dual Dalu is one of these. I think it's a isekai too, where they go to another world type of situation. I was almost done with this one. I was almost done, but they started to slow down on the updates. Like there was some issue they had with translating it. So with a lot of these web fictions, I mean these Eastern fictions, they are written in Chinese or in one of these Chinese languages, and people translate it over to English. And so during that process, you have like a business case where because in the a lot of these are like Chinese actual novels and people over there pay to read them. And so when you're translating them over to English, it's not really sure, where that money is coming from, like who's going to buy, like how, I don't know, it's some sort of business type of problem or copyright type of issue they have going on. And so some of these sites um, were supposed to have had some sort of a deal with them, and some of them didn't, or I don't know exactly what was going on, but there were some issues there. So the translations kind of slowed down or stopped at one point, and so I had to stop. But I think it's done now. I think this one is finished, so I might have to go back. Yeah, yeah, this one's finished, and I wasn't too far behind. So I had to go back and see how far behind I am, and finish it because it was really cool. All right, another one that I really, really enjoyed, Brennis. So this one is, I had to stop reading because again, the author had some problems. They had problems with their life, whether it was health issues or family issues or whatever, and they stopped writing. But it looks like they picked it up again. So yeah, you can see it's a lot of stuff. And I was around here, I believe, somewhere around one of these chapters. So yeah, it looks like it might actually almost be done. So this is a good time to get back in there. And I still remember a lot, even though it's been like a year, maybe 2 years. Yeah, probably two, maybe even 3 years since I've read this. But I still remember a lot of the story, like the monkey family. That has been one of my favorite kind of superpower things. And the reason I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but in this novel, which I think it's sort of science fiction, but also with a fantasy scan. Like I just like the interweaving of it. But the way that they use these powers, they also go into the consequences of the powers. Like people have powers, but okay, what, like if you're, for instance, if you're fast, right, like with the Flash, if you were actually that fast in real life, then how would it affect the laws of physics, right? Like when you run, you would have so much friction, you'd be burning up. Like you might burn up your own body or the street, or if you go too fast, you might, like in the boys, right? You can smash into somebody and just completely like obliviating. So a lot of stories, don't go into the consequences or the realistic kind of, nuances of having powers, but this one does, and it was really great, really really great. And I really like the main character too, because they were like another problem with many of these type of novels. Sometimes it feels like the main character is like either too like a Naruto type of character where they're like too simple, or like the perfect kind of person, and they don't really seem to have very many moral quandaries within their minds, and it kind of gets to the idea that you can have a good and an evil, when in actuality like good and evil is kind of nuanced and it's based on motivation and values and all this other stuff. So I really like stories that get into the nuance and get into the ideas of how people function. And this one specifically uses a like super smart character, so like an Artemis Fowl type of character. And I don't mean the movie, oh please. But like a, a character that's a genius, right? And they act like it, right? A lot of these characters sometimes they're not that smart, or they're just your average boy type of situation. But this one I really like that they're super brilliant, and they take that on, and they're not trying to be just like everybody else. Because a lot of things that you hear in these stories, like, oh, they're like it's like the typical hero journey where they're reluctant to step into the power or to step into their thing. But with these, like when you have characters who like, oh, I have power, bet, let me go right into it, like let me you know really make use of it. I really appreciate that, because I feel like that's the type of person I would be. Like if I found out I had powers, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I wish I were regular. Oh, why do I have powers? Oh, whatever. No, I'm going action. Like I'm gonna change the world. Let's make things happen, right? So I do appreciate when writers do that. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna start reading this one again. So this is another one. It's the Eastern fiction, Skyfire Avenue. This one has mechs in a fantasy type of world. So science fiction, fantasy once again, but far future. And this one was really cool. I stopped reading this one because I think it was translating too slow once again, or something like that. or I just didn't have time. At the time, I was reading like I'm only reading 5 right now. Before I used to read like 10, maybe even 15, these things at the same time. So I would have no time, for other stuff that's supposed to be more important. So yeah, that's another reason I had to take a break on stuff like this. But yeah, these are all the things that were on high that are on hiatus for one reason or another. Now, finally, we'll get into some things that I finished. So I talked about the Nothing Mage. I finished that one. That was relatively short. Worm. Worm was one of the first, pretty much the first Western web fiction I've read. I said Western because some of the first ever web fictions I read were actually the Eastern ones, the Zangxia, and we'll get into those. But Worm was one of the first Western one, and it had people with powers. This was beautiful, amazing story. I really enjoyed it. There's some problems with how it ended. Personally, I don't personally really enjoyed how it ended, but it ended, and it was cool, and I enjoyed it. And this, oh my gosh, this author is taking over the space. Like, if you want to see for yourself, these web fictions, you can go to Talk Web Fiction or Web Fiction Guide and see a whole list of the popular stories. So this is the author of let's go to the all time favorites. Yeah, Worm, Wild Bow. They have Worm, Ward, Twig, Pack. So they're the only author I think with multiple things on the top level. So they are a great author. Now, unfortunately, I don't. I didn't personally enjoy the other works they did too much. I started Ward, but something just didn't really draw me in that much. I started Twig. It drew me in a little bit more, but it just stopped. I don't know why it stopped kind of drawing me in. I started Pack, but it didn't really draw me in too much. So I don't know what's going on there, but other people really enjoy it, so more power to them. But yeah, I finished Worm. That was great. Mother of Learning. Oh my gosh, Mother of Learning was that kind of like the Groundhog Day type of thing where they repeat the same month over and over. And it did it extremely well. Really, really great reading. And I actually think, if I'm correct in saying this, I think this author helped with the Wheel of Time, helped finish the Wheel of Time. I think I may be incorrect. I know one of these authors I was reading helped finish the Wheel of Time, which is interesting. I never read the Wheel of Time. That's on my list, but yeah. But anyways, this story is really great. It took me a long time to finish because they only released on a monthly basis. They had one chapter a month, maybe, and sometimes they had some problems and they couldn't do that month, so you had to wait a whole another month or 2 months or 3 months, right, before another one. So finally they finished, and it was great. I really enjoyed this whole series. Highly recommend. I Shall Seal the Heavens is another really good one. This is the first Zangxia I've ever read. It was really incredible, amazing story, and it was great. There's a lot of problems here too. They have some harem stuff. At the time, I didn't really know that was like a thing. So it was kind of like weird to see it, but it doesn't go into it. I don't think, if I remember correctly, it's not that bad in this. And it's sad you have to say that, but for the most part, they had some really great stuff, and they created. I think this one might have created a lot of the tropes that other or other Eastern fictions use. Like, um, I'm not sure. I might be completely wrong on that, but nonetheless, this one has some of my favorite tropes with the stuff like cultivation and things like that, which is really interesting. Um, but yeah, it was a great read, and it took me a long time to finish it. But look at that, 1,600 chapters. 1,600 chapters. This was crazy. Then we have Coiling Dragon. This is the second web or Eastern Zangxi I've read and finished. Another very long one. Not as long as the other one, I don't think, but this was pretty great too. A similar type of ideas, type of setting, um, but it was great. It was great. Different character, different plot, but they definitely have similar tropes. But it was great to read. The Legendary Moonlight Saga. This is the first um, lit RPG that I've read, where specifically it's a VR MMORPG. So This one tells a story basically like a the Korean type of world. You have this new MMO come out, kind of like sort of online type of situation. But this one they go way more into it, and it's way better than sort of online in my opinion. But this one's pretty cool. I'm not sure how long it was. Probably, yeah, pretty long, but it was pretty nice. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it with the things I've finished. Um, these are a lot. There's a lot of stuff out there, y'all. So if you're interested in this space, I definitely recommend checking out this site and reading through these things. I'm not sure what book I'm going to start next. Again, I might just finish the ones I have now. Some of these are finally approaching their end, so I might finish these off now and then bust through a whole bunch of novels and then go come back to these stuff that are on hiatus and stuff that is on my reading list, and then go from there. Um, I actually tried to write my own web fiction 5 years ago, a couple years ago. Um, this one, so silly. So the whole idea for this is like I didn't even want to tell people what the plot line was or what it was about because I wanted to completely make it up as I go. So I would take people's comments, and ideas and stuff like that, and put it in the story. Of course, I would give them like the credit for have those ideas. But every time somebody came up with an idea or I saw somebody's name, I would find some way to bring it in the story. And the reason for that is because number one, again, my biggest thing is world building. So I wanted to see if I could build a world that is so dynamic that I could put any character into it and put any type of plot line into it, right? And so I know that's crazy. It probably doesn't make sense, but that was my idea at the time. I only did 2 chapters because nobody read it, and I realized I don't like writing. uh, so yeah, but that was my little stint into it. Right now, I am still excited. I still want to create my own kind of stories, but I'm considering going full ham into world building and creating a story that's really just more of a encyclopedia, right? Like here's a world, and I might tell some lore about it and things like that. But I'm so excited to to create my own worlds that I think any book because I do want to write some books, but I don't enjoy writing characters and things like that. So I'm thinking I'm going to go into the space of just world building and see how far I can get doing that. It might not work. I might just have some bull crap, but I want to try it and I want to test my world building skills. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. But anyways, that that's my reading stuff. That's my web fiction guide. It doesn't get into any of the novels. Like I have a huge reading list of novels of finished works that I actually want to get into. Like again, like Brandon Sanderson and other stuff like that. But we'll get into that at another date. Um, but yeah, I hope I've introduced you to some interesting things to read if you're interested in fictions and web fictions, and supporting indie creators. I definitely suggest checking out these places like Royal World and all these other web fiction stuff. So yeah, thanks for watching and have a great day. See ya. Bye bye.